Okay, let's open with some prayer. All right. No. Pay attention, Brittany. Great Yehovah, mighty and merciful Yehovah, almighty and great Elohim. You are the maker and creator of us all. You give us this feast of Sukkot, and you allow us to be your servants. We thank you for being with us this feast and helping us with the connection with Pal Talk, that other people have been able to listen in and also to enjoy the feast with you. And we thank you for all the good and wondrous things you've done for us, the way you have blessed us and with abundance, and that you have watched over us and kept everyone safe this year. Please be with us this day and guide the message today. Help it to be for people able to learn things. And then also be with us as we travel back home, and keep us safe on our travels so that we may make it home safely. And we praise you and honor you, great and all-powerful Elohim. Baruch Yehovah, blessed is Yehovah, Olam v'olam, forever and ever. Amen v'amen. Okay. Now, if you haven't seen the link or you didn't get the message, we're going to be covering the study on humbleness and humility. It is one I've done before, and so we'll be going through that. And again, at the end, we'll pick up questions at the end, since I'll be reading this. I'll read it from the paper here, and we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and get started. What is humbleness and humility? Humble is not a widely used word today in most cultures. It conveys to some weakness. Others see it as a religious state of a person. Instead of trying to define it in English, let's see if we can let the Tanakh define it for us. We'll look at the examples of the Hebrew words used to convey this concept. To do this, we must answer these questions. Just what is humble and humility in the Tanakh? What are examples of humbleness and humility in Tanakh? And how can we be humble and exhibit humility? Now, preparing for this study, I used the following references: the Brown Jervis Briggs Hebrew English Lexicon, the Interlinear Bible by J.P. Green, the New Englishman Hebrew Concordance, the Electronic JPS, and the Hebrew English JPS. So let's start today by reading an account of someone mentioned as humble in the Mikra, or Scriptures. In Bamidbar 12, we'll start in verse 1 and we'll read through to verse 16. We're going to be covering a lot of context this time. In the past, in a lot of the other studies I've done, we've kind of picked up where the words were specifically in the verses here. But we're going to read a lot of context, because with this study, we need to understand what's going on in the different scriptures we're referencing. And it says, when they were in Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moshe because of the Cushite woman he had married. He had married a Cushite woman. They said, has Jehovah spoken only through Moshe? Has he not spoken through us as well? Jehovah heard it. Now Moshe was very humble man, more so than any other man on earth. Suddenly, Jehovah called to Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, come out, you three, to the tent of meeting. And so the three of them went out. Jehovah came down in a pillar of cloud and stopped at the entrance of the tent and called out, Aaron and Miriam. The two of them came forward, and he said, "Hear these my words. When a prophet of Jehovah arises among you, I will make myself known to him in a vision. I will speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moshe. He is trusted throughout all my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles. He beholds the likeness of Jehovah. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moshe?" Still incensed with them, Jehovah departed. As the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam stricken with snow-white scales. Then Aaron turned to Miriam and saw she was stricken with scale. And Aharon said to Moshe, O Adonai, account not unto us the sin we have committed in our folly. Let her not be as one dead who emerges from his womb, half his flesh eaten away. So Moshe cried out to Jehovah, saying, El, pray, heal her. But Jehovah said to Moshe, if her father spat in her face, would she not bear her shame for 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp for 7 days, and let her be readmitted. So Miriam was shut out of the camp for 7 days, and the people did not march on until Miriam was readmitted. After that, the people set out from Hazeroth and encamped in the wilderness of Paran. Okay, this is me. There's no Baha'i here in this room. If you want, you can go ahead and check one of the other rooms. All right. So what we see here in this first account is we know that Moshe was the appointed leader. We know Moshe was the appointed leader. And here we have a situation where, for some reason, Miriam and Aaron felt incensed. And it seems to be about the wife that he married, because it says, they spoke against him because of the married woman he married. He married a Cushite woman. Well, what seems to be the problem here? Because here we have Moshe, who is, whose brother is Aaron and sister is Aaron. And here we have a situation where they're going ahead and they're saying is, hey, you're not the only one Jehovah spoke through. He spoke to us too. And it seems to be that because of what he did, they were taking him to task for it. Well, Jehovah hears it, of course, because Jehovah can hear everything. And he calls the three out, and he basically asks them why didn't they, him and her, why didn't they think about what they were doing? Because they're saying is that Moshe was the most humblest man, more than any other man on the earth. And we're going to look at that statement a little bit later. But essentially, what he tried to convey to them is that Moshe is his prophet. There was no one else there is the prophet for Jehovah when dealing with the children of Israel. Moshe was the one he chose. Yes, he spoke through Aaron, he spoke through Miriam, but he was the one appointed by Jehovah. Okay. Now, who was the person who spoke that said that Moshe was a very humble man? Now, in looking at the text here, we see that it's kind of like, it's almost like a sidebar. And it would appear that, now, I don't know if Moshe would write it himself, if he was a humble man, he would not probably say that he was humble. It was probably something that was dictated by Jehovah, since he was the one who dictated a lot of this to be written down. why, and we talked about just a minute ago why it was spoken. The reason they spoke against him, and the reason he said he was humble was because we see here Moshe was not fighting against them, saying, wait a second, I'm the prophet here. What are you doing? Don't you recognize I'm the man? I'm the man here. No, he didn't do that. He just took whatever they were dishing out to him. What was the importance of being used here, that statement? Why was that important? Well, it kind of identifies the character of Moshe, and it seems to be a character that's desirable in Torah and the rest of the Tanakh. And so here we have, first of all, let's find a little bit more about why did Aaron and Miriam actually make the statement? Why were they upset? Well, let's look a little bit at Shemot, Exodus 2, 1 through 10, and then what was given in the law about the priests and marriage in Vayikra, Leviticus 21, 10 through 15. All right. Now, did we, let's see. Okay. So, let's see. Shemot, Exodus. I don't think I have this in the paper. Shemot, Exodus 1 through, or Shemot 2. Wrong book. There we go. Turning to the page there. All right. So here's where it reads here. It tells about who was Moshe. Who was Moshe? All right. A certain man of the house of Levi, or Levi, went and married a Leviite woman, or Levite woman. A Levite. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw how beautiful he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could not hide him any longer, she got a wicker basket for him, caulked it up with bitumen and pitch, and put the child in and placed it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. And the sister stationed herself at a distance to learn what would befall him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the Nile, and while her maidens walked along the Nile, she spied the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to fetch it. When she opened it and saw it was a child, the boy was crying. She took pity on it and said, "This must be a Hebrew child." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get a Hebrew nurse to suckle the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter answered, "Yes." So the girl went and called the child's mother, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will pay wages." So the woman took the child and nursed it. And when the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who made him her son. She named him Moshe, explaining, "I drew him out of the water." All right, so here we find out is Moshe is a Levite. This is one of the things. So in Leviticus, Vayikra 21:10 through 15, we read in the paper, it says, "The priest who is exalted above his fellows, on whose head the anointing oil has been poured, and who has been ordained to wear the vestments, shall not bare his head, rend his vestments. He shall not go in where there is any dead body. He shall not defile himself, even for his father or his mother. He shall not go outside the sanctuary to profane the sanctuary of his Elohim. For upon him is the distinction of the anointing oil of Elohim, mine, Yehovah's." And in 13, this is kind of what I think might have happened here, why they were so upset. "He may marry only a woman who is a virgin, a widow, or a divorced woman, or one who is degraded by harlotry, such he may not marry, and only a virgin of his own kin may he take to wife, that he may not profane his offspring from among his kin, for I, Yehovah, have sanctified him. Now, what we have here is, and this text is given a little bit later, but it may have been that it was just reported later. It may have already been mentioned at this time. We don't know. But it seemed to be the only thing logically that they would be upset that he married a woman who was not his kin. So what we see here is that they were upset because maybe they thought that since he was the head of all the people, that he should have married someone from his own tribe, not necessarily this woman from outside his tribe. And it's pouring down outside. A little sidebar. Okay. All right. Now, could they be thinking of this when they were starting to criticize Moshe? You know, it's hard to know. I mean, was the message of Levite given, this early on? Was that, because we're looking at, this is Numbers, Bamidbar, so this is a little bit later, so it's very possible they had this message already. All right. Now, what they did was they questioned Moshe's authority. He, in their mind, was just maybe breaking of the law that just was given, and it is not clear that this is so, but it's a possibility. But why was the humble statement made? Doesn't it say that Moshe was arguing with them? There's no indication of that, like we talked about earlier. However, their talk against Moses was such that it was undermining his authority. In Bamidbar 12, it said 12:2 it says, they said, has Jehovah spoken through Moshe, only through Moshe? Has he not spoken through us as well? So what is being said here to describe Moshe as humble, and what does it mean in Hebrew? Well, in Bamidbar, Numbers 12:3, the man Moshe was humble more than any other man who was on the face of the earth. In Hebrew, now that's in the Interlinear Bible. In Hebrew, it would be Vahayesh Moshe Anav Ma'amiko Ha'adam Asher Apameh Ha'adamah. Okay, so we have here is, and the man Moshe, humble is how they're translating it here. Anav is also used for the word, and we'll see this later, is for afflicted. Okay. From all, more than from all the men which on the face the earth, essentially is what it's saying. Anav is the word that we're going to look at today to begin our study. It's reference number 6035 and is a masculine noun and found in the BDB on page 776. It's from the root word ana, an, nun, he, reference number 6031, and a verb, which is pages 775 through 776 in the BDB, and pages 964 to 965 in the New Englishman Hebrew Concordance. Also related to this, we're going to look at is the word ani, and that's reference number 6041, which is page 965 in the New Englishman Hebrew Concordance and 776 in the BDB. So let's look at 6035, and remember that was Anab. So Anab, and we're going to look at Mishle, Proverbs 3:34. At scoffers he scoffs, but to the lowly he shows grace. All right, so here we see he talks about, and remember, anav here is also used for the afflicted too. So it could also be saying is, to the afflicted he shows grace. Afflicted in the sense of one being humbled. In the next one, it was Mishlei Proverbs 14:21. Who despises his fellow is wrong or sins, is what it says. He who shows pity for the afflicted or lowly, or as we've seen in other places, humble, is happy. Or the person who favors the lowly in this case. Mishlei, Proverbs 16:19. Better to be humble, lo shafal. This is a different word here for the word humble, which is 82:15. We'll actually have a couple of scriptures at the end that we'll look at that deal with this word. And among the lowly or afflicted shall share the spoils with the proud. In Yeshayahu, Isaiah 61:1, the Spirit of Adonai Yehovah is upon me, because Yehovah has anointed me. He has sent me a herald of joy to the humble, Anavim, to bind up the wounded heart, and to proclaim release to the captives and liberation to the imprisoned. And here we see that Isaiah, or Yeshayahu, talking about the Spirit of Yehovah is upon him, and that he had anointed him, and to herald joy to those who were humbled. And again, this is that same word anav, which is also used for afflicted. So humble in the sense of affliction. And it would match with this verse because it says to bind up the wounded heart, clearly someone afflicted, to proclaim release to the captives, again, those who are afflicted, and liberation to the imprisoned. In Zephaniah, I think it should be Zephaniah, is what should that be. Zephaniah 2:3, seek Yehovah, all you humble. And then again, this is anav. This would be ko anve, so all you afflicted of the land, who have fulfilled his law, seek righteousness, seek humility. And that should be anabab. I've got here ababa, and that's not it. That's anavba, which is the other word we're going to be looking at. So that should be an N after the A, first A. Perhaps you will find shelter on the day of Jehovah's anger. In Tehillim, Psalms 10:17, you will listen to the entreaty of the lowly, or afflicted, or humble. Anavim, O Yehovah, you make their hearts firm, you incline your ear. And again in Telahim, Psalms 22:27, let the lowly, the humble, the afflicted, eat and be satisfied. Let all who seek Yehovah praise him. Always be of good cheer. And again, same book, verse 25:9, he guides the lowly, Anavim, which is to say humble or afflicted, in the right path. He teaches the lowly, Anavim, his way. And again, in the same book, 37:11, but the lowly, or in this case, Anavim, and the afflicted, or lowly, or humble, shall inherit the land, delight in abundant well-being. And lastly, in Psalms, again, 69:33, the lowly, Anavim, will seek and rejoice. You who are mindful of Elohim, take heart. What it's saying here is, the humble are glad. You who seek Yehovah, let live your heart, is what it's saying in the Hebrew. And so what we have here is this is Anav, and you can see here that a lot of this, it does reflect a humbleness in nature, but it also reflects that affliction that goes with the word Anav. We're going to see that in one of the later verses here as we look and see one talking about the Yom HaKippurim later. Now let's look at the adjective form, Ani, which is 60:41. And then in Shemot 22:24, it says, if you lend money to my people, the poor, Ani, among you, do not act towards them as a creditor, exact no interest from them. So here we have an adjective to describe his people. And so in this case, they use the word poor. You could also, in a sense, also use the word afflicted. Because when you afflict somebody, they may not have anything. In other words, they've gone through. Think of Job in the sense that they lost everything. In Vayikra, Leviticus 19:10, you shall pick your vineyard bare and gather the fallen fruit of your vineyard, but you shall leave them for the poor, le ani, which is to the poor actually, and the stranger, Yehovah and your Elohim. And in Devarim, Deuteronomy 15:11, for there will never cease to be a needy one in your land. Now that's an interesting statement because they're supposed to take care of the poor, and yet there's always going to be someone needy in their land. Which is why I command you, open up your hand to the poor. La, ani, uk, the needy kinsman in your land. In Shemuel Bet, 2 Samuel 22:28. To the humble folk. And again, we've seen earlier it was used as poor. And actually used in most cases as poor here. Or those who don't have anything. To the humble folk, you give victory, and you look with scorn on the haughty. All right. To those who are lifted up, he looks with scorn to. To those who are pressed down, those who are made humbled, they are the ones that he will give victory to. In Yeshayahu, Isaiah 58:7. Okay. Now this is dealing with this is dealing with the poor, but also those, and we've seen this also in another study we did on Yom Kippurim, the afflicted. It says, it is to share your bread with the hungry, to take the wretched, the wandering poor, va aneim, into your home, when you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to ignore your kin. And so we see here with this one here, again, those who have nothing. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 66:2. All this was made by my hand, thus it all came into being, declares Yehovah. Yet to such a one I look, to the poor and brokenhearted, the afflicted one, the humbled one, the brokenhearted, who is concerned about my word. So here we see Jehovah looks to the ones who are afflicted, who are humbled, and who are seeking after him and concerned about his word. In Zephaniah, in that In that day, that was chapter 3, verses 11 to 13.
Verses 11 to 13. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. In that day, you will no longer be ashamed for all the deeds by which you have defiled me. For then I will reprove the proud and the exultant among you. Here's you get the proud and the ones who are exalted. And you will be haughty no more on my sacred mount. In other words, you're not going to be lifted up. But I will leave within you a poor and humble folk, or a poor and weakened folk. And they shall find refuge in the name of Jehovah. The remnant of Israel shall do no wrong, and speak no falsehood. A deceitful tongue shall not be in their mouths. Only such as these shall graze and lie down, with none to trouble them. Here we see in Zephaniah that he's going to remove the proud and the ones who exalt themselves, to the haughty, the ones who try to show themselves as better than others. And he will leave you with the poor, with the ones that have nothing, the ones who have been humbled, the ones who are afflicted. And they will find refuge, because if there was no problem, if there wasn't an affliction there, then why would they need refuge? Why would they need protection? The remnant of Israel shall do no wrong. Okay, so they're not going to speak falsely. They're not going to do wrong.
Where's that at?
That's Zephaniah 3:11 through 13.
Is that Zechariah?
Zephaniah.
Isaiah.
Zephaniah. That's Zephaniah. That's the English.
That's an
Okay, now, so far I've been telling you what these words mean, and I've been telling you how they, trying to give you an idea of what they mean. But let's go to the verb, because like I've talked about before, the verb in most cases will give you an answer as to what the meaning of the noun or the adverb or the adjective is. And the verb in this case is anah, and that's 60:31. And we see here in Shemot, Exodus 10:3. And we see this word used, and this verb is telling us there's an action. So in 10:3 it says, So Moshe and Aharon went to Pharaoh and said to him, Thus says Jehovah, the Elohim of the Hebrews, How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may worship me. Now, what was the problem with Pharaoh? Pharaoh exalted himself. He was God of Egypt. He was Ra. He was the God in flesh, if you would. All right. And so they go to him to ask him to let the people go. And they say to him, How long will you refuse to humble? Right? So we have le'onah, or refuse to humble. Okay? So let's see what that means. Does that mean that for him to be, how would he afflict himself? Well, let's look at Shemot, Exodus 1, 11 through 12, sorry. Okay. So they, the taskmasters over them, to oppress, anat, vo, them with forced labor, and they built garrison cities for Pharaoh, Hitmos, and Ramesses. But the more that they oppressed Ba'anu, the more they increased and spread out the Egyptians, who came to dread the Israelites. Here we see kind of what was happening. When Moshe and Aharon were going up to Pharaoh, they were telling him, how long will you refuse to humble yourself? How long before you will afflict yourself? Will you make yourself lowly to the point that you will then recognize these are my people and you will let them go? In other words, he did not recognize Yehovah. But we see here with Exodus 1 that taskmasters, what does a taskmaster do? A taskmaster generally keeps the people working. They keep up, whatever it takes to do it. And it's forced labor. So in other words, they were forcing them to build things. All right, so let's look at another place where this is used. The same word is used here in Shemot Exodus 22, 21 through 22. And it says, "You shall not ill-treat ta'anun, a widow or orphan. If you do mistreat, ana ta'ana," which is essentially means seriously afflict. If you do seriously afflict them, or you seriously cause harm to them, make them cry out, and I will hear their outcry as soon as they cry out to me. So here we see your mistreatment or ill treatment. In other words, being afflicted or taken down low. In Shemot, Exodus 32:18, but he answered, "Is it not the sound of the tune of triumph, or the sound of the tune of defeat? It is the sound of song I hear." Now here, interesting, this word song is not actually what we see the word is. The word here is a not. So in this verse, they said it's the sound of song. It's the song or the sound of afflicting. In other words, they were worshiping. So they were worshiping him. The idol that was there, they were bowing down to it. That was what they were hearing. And this is the golden calf incident here. In Bar Midbar, Numbers 29:7. "On the 10th day of the same 7th month, you shall observe a sacred occasion, and you shall practice self-denial." Now this is talking about what? The 10th day of the 7th month. That's Yom HaKippurim. Yom HaKippurim. And so here we see the word practice self-denial. Anitim. I think I got an extra I in there too. It should be anitim. So we see here that the same word, the practicing of self-denial, which we've understood in other times as afflict. So again, this is affliction. In other words, it can be mistreatment. It can be causing yourself to be humbled, things like that. Devarim, Deuteronomy 8, 2 through 3 and 16 says, "Remember the long way that Yehovah your Elohim has made you travel in the wilderness these past 40 years, that he may test you by hardships, anotak, to learn what was in your hearts, whether you would keep his commandments or not. He subjected you to hardship, baya anak, of hunger, and gave you manna to eat." So part of the hardship was, part of the affliction of hunger. He made them hungry, and then he gave them manna to eat, which neither you nor your fathers had ever known, in order to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but that man may live on anything that Yehovah decrees. So here we see that whatever Yehovah says, that is what a man may live by. And it said he tested them by hardships. He caused life to be hard for them. It was a way of making them humble And it says in 16, "Who fed you in the wilderness with manna, with which your fathers had never known, in order to test you by hardships, anotah, only to benefit you in the end." So in the end, they got a benefit because by these hardships, they were afflicted, they were made humble. When we see from these that humble is afflicted, whether by afflicting ourselves or by fasting and submission, or by the affliction of being poor, and as one who has myself, I grew up poor, so I understand what that affliction is. And if you have too, then you also know what that is. It's basically not being able to get the basic needs that you need. All right. It is the opposite of proud and haughty. And we've also seen some of the ways that Yehovah will be inclined to us if we are in this way. In the end, the humbling of us is to our benefit. We see this particularly in the humbling of Pharaoh. His country was afflicted, or he and his country were afflicted in the account of Exodus. So looking at an example of a humble man, let's look at Moshe. So now we have an idea of what is this word. He is the humble man, but he's humble in the sense of afflicted. So let's see this example of this humble, afflicted man. In Shemot Exodus 2:11 through 15. Sometime after that, Moshe had grown up. He went out to his kinsfolks and witnessed their labors. He saw the Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He turned this way and that, and seeing that no one was about, he struck the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. And when he went out the next day, he found 2 Hebrews fighting. So he said to the offender, "Why do you strike your fellow?" And he retorted, "Who made you chief and ruler over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" So now, Moshe was afraid. He was frightened, and he thought, then the matter is known. When Pharaoh learned of the matter, he sought to kill Moshe. But Moshe fled from Pharaoh, and he arrived in the land of Midian and sat down beside a well. Well, looking at this, we see that Moshe didn't start out very humble to start with. He actually took some things into his own hand. He killed a man, and he had to run for his life. Now, at this time, he's a grown man. We don't have a good indication of about what time. I mean, we can deduce from the scriptures that he's probably in his 40s when he left. And we do that because it tells us I believe it tells us how many years he was in Midian, and then we subtracted from that what the year of it when he went to Pharaoh, which was when he was 80. Okay, and so Exodus 2:23 through 3:1, it says, "A long time after that, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites were groaning under their bondage and cried out, and their cry for help from the bondage rose up to Elohim." In 24 it says, "Elohim heard their moaning, and Elohim remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Yitzhak, and Yaakov." That's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. "And Elohim looked upon the Israelites, and Elohim took notice of them." In 3:1 it says, "Now Moshe, tending flocks of his father-in-law Yithro, the priest of Midian, drove the flock into the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of Elohim." Moshe is learning to be a shepherd in Midian. That was a big drop in position from a prince of Egypt. When he approached a wondrous sign of a burning bush, Elohim confronts him. He has been in the process of being prepared to do a mission. He did not come to Pharaoh until he was owed by our own standards today. Matter of fact, we see this in Shemot Exodus 7:7. Moshe was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they made their demand on Pharaoh. So here we see all this time he's left Egypt. Now, as a prince of Egypt, what exactly was his life? Well, he was attended to by many servants. He was able to go where he wanted to, do what he pleased. Anything he wanted as a prince of Egypt, he was able to acquire. Nothing was denied him that he wanted. And so here he goes from that. He goes and he is instead of leading people, he's now leading sheep. And so he's been greatly humbled over 40 years. Now he's been assigned to free his people. Now, is he frightened here, or has he just been humbled? Has he been afflicted to the point that he's now in a position that Jehovah can now have him do what he wants? In Shemot, Exodus 3:11 and 12. But Moshe said to Elohim, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and free the Israelites from Egypt?" And he said, and Jehovah said, basically, "I will be with you. That shall be your sign that it was I who sent you. When you have freed the people from Egypt, you shall worship Elohim at this mountain." Here's a man who does not see himself as worthy to free Jehovah's people. In the following verse, he gives proofs to show he did not come from Jehovah. There are proofs that he did come from Jehovah. Sorry about that. In Shemot, Exodus 4:1 through 17. When Moshe spoke up and said, "What if they do not believe me and do not listen to me, but say, Jehovah did not appear to you?" Jehovah said, "What is that in your hand?" And he replied, "A rod." He said, "Cast it to the ground." He cast it to the ground, and it became a snake. And Moshe recoiled from it. Then Jehovah said to Moshe, "Put out your hand and grasp it by the tail." He put out his hand and seized it, and it became a rod in his hand. That they might believe that Jehovah, the Elohim of their fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob, that's Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, did appear to you. Jehovah said to him further, "Put your hand in your bosom." And so he does. He puts it within his robe. He pulls his hands out. He put his hand in the bosom, and then he took it out. His hand was encrusted with with the snowy scales, just like we saw earlier that happened to Miriam. And he said, "Put your hand back in your bosom." So he put it back in his robe. And he put his hand, he put his hand in his bosom, and when he took it out of his bosom, it was like the rest of his body. If they do not believe you or pay heed to the first sign, they will believe the second. And if they are not convinced by both of these signs, and still do not heed you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on dry land. And the water that you take from the Nile, will turn to blood on the dry ground. But Moshe said to Jehovah, "Please, Jehovah, I have never been a man of words, either in times past or now that you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." So here we have essentially Moshe. Up to this time, he's giving him all these devices to use to say, "This is to prove who I am, or who you came from. This is to prove that you came from Jehovah." And he comes back. He says, "I've never been a man of words. In other words, I don't speak well, either in times past or now. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." Does that mean he stuttered? Maybe he didn't speak very well. So he didn't think that he was going to be a messenger. And so Jehovah says to him, "Who gives man speech? Who makes the dumb or the deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, Jehovah? Go now, and I will be with you as you speak and will instruct you what to say." But he said, "Please, Jehovah, make someone else your agent." And Jehovah became angry with Moshe, and he said, There is your brother Aaron, the Levite. He, I know, readily speaks readily. Even now he is setting out to meet you. He will be happy to see you. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with you and with him as you speak, and tell you both what to do. And he shall speak for you to the people. He shall serve as your spokesman, with you playing the role of Elohim to him. Take with you this rod, with which you shall perform the signs. Again, let's ask ourselves, was this fear or someone who did not think highly of himself? Now, my own thought is he didn't really think highly of himself at this point. Here's a man who went from being the chief, one of the chief, potentially people in line for the throne of Egypt, and he's now a shepherd herder, and he doesn't feel very much like a leader at this point. In Shemot, Exodus 6:12. But Moshe appealed to Jehovah, saying, the Israelites would not listen to me. How then should Pharaoh heed me, a man of impeded speech? He keeps using this thing. I can't speak well. I can't talk well. And he says it again in Shemot, Exodus 6:30. Moshe appealed to Jehovah, saying, see, I am of impeded speech. How then should Pharaoh heed me? He continues to not see himself as worthy to carry Jehovah's demands to Pharaoh. I don't really think it's fear on his part. In Shemot, Exodus 32, 7 through 14, Jehovah spoke to Moshe, hurry down, for the people who you brought out of the land have acted basely. They have acted quickly to turn aside from the way that I have enjoined upon them. They have made themselves a molten calf and bowed low to it, sacrificed to it, saying, this is your Elohim, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Jehovah further said to Moshe, I see that this is a stiff-necked people. Now let me be in my anger, that my anger may blaze forth against them, and I may destroy them and make of you, Moshe, you, a great nation. What was Moshe's reaction? What would be our reaction? He thinks of how this destruction would look to others, and prays for Jehovah not to go through with it. That's what he's thinking of. Here he has the perfect opportunity to say, yes, it will be my descendants who will be the great people, not the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all of Jacob's children. It will be my descendants. Now he doesn't do that. It says, but Moshe implored Jehovah his Elohim, saying, let not your anger, Jehovah, blaze forth against your people, whom you delivered from the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand. Let not the Egyptians say, it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains and annihilate them from the face of the earth. Turn from your blazing anger. Renounce the plan to punish your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and how you swore to them by yourself, and said to them, I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give to your offspring this whole land which I spoke, to possess forever. And Jehovah renounced his punishment that he planned to bring upon the people. Now the question is, was this a test to test Moshe? Would Jehovah have really destroyed all these people? It seems to say that he was willing to, but maybe this was just a test of Moshe. We don't know, but we see that Moshe did pass the test if it was, because instead of saying, in addition, it didn't say that I have delivered these people for you and brought them to this mountain as you told me. He said you. He said he gives the honor and the glory to Jehovah. Again, he puts Jehovah first. and wants him to lead his people, not himself. He doesn't see himself as the leader. He sees himself as simply a servant of Yehovah. In Shemot, Exodus 33:12-23, Moshe said to Yehovah, "See, you say to me, lead this people forward. But you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. Now, if I have truly gained your favor, pray let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider too that this nation is your people." And he said, "I will go in the lead and will lighten your burden." And he said to him, "Unless you go in the lead, do not make us leave this place. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor unless you go with us, so that we may be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth?" So here we see Moshe saying to him, "You say to me, lead this people forward." So Jehovah's telling him to lead them. And yet, at the same time, he lets them know. He said that, if you won't go with us, we don't want to go any further. You have to be the one that goes with us. And that you have to be with us so that other people will know that you are our Elohim and that you are indeed with us. Now in 17 he continues, says, "And Yehovah said to Moshe, I will also do this thing you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name." And he said, this is Moshe, "Oh, let me behold your presence." In other words, let me see you. See, up to this point, Moshe, when you think about it, he said, well, he saw the burning bush. What did he see in the burning bush? He saw a messenger who appeared as a flame in a bush, but Jehovah's voice came through that messenger. It wasn't Jehovah there in the bush. It's just his voice came through that. Here he's asking for him. He says, "Let me behold your presence." And Jehovah answered, "I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you the name Yehovah, and the grace that I grant you, and the compassion I show." And he said, "You cannot see my face, for man cannot see me and live." And Jehovah said, "See, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock." It's like a cleft in the rock. "As my presence passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and shield you with my hand till I have passed. Then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." So here's a man, they said, he speaks to me, and in some translations it says, he speaks to me face to face. I believe it uses the word in the JPS, that he speaks to me mouth to mouth. One speaking. In other words, he hears me and I hear him. So he is, in this sense, right, he said, "Truly you have gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name." So here, Yehovah had singled out Moshe, right? And so he is rewarded for his humble service. He never once puts himself, up to this point, he never once puts himself ahead of Yehovah. He never makes himself higher. And that's something that we have to look at, is that we never make ourselves higher than Yehovah. We always exalt him. Shemot, Exodus 34, 8-9. Moshe hastened to bow low to the ground in homage, and saying, "If I have gained your favor, Yehovah, pray, let Yehovah go in our midst, even though this is a stiff-necked people. Pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your own." Well, here, again, he's bowing low in homage. He's, like we talked about in praying in prayer, he bowed down in homage to him. And he's interceding. He's asking for Yehovah to forgive the people. But, like every one of us, Moshe has a bad day. Everybody has a bad day. So here we are. We're in our Midbar Numbers 11, 10-15, and 21-23. Moshe heard the people weeping, every clan apart, each person at the entrance of his tent. Jehovah was very angry, and Moshe was distressed. And Moshe said to Jehovah, "Why have you dealt ill with your servant? Why have I not enjoyed your favor, that you have laid the burden of all this people upon me? Did I conceive all this people? Did I bear them, that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries an infant? To the land that you have promised on oath to their father? Where am I to get meat to give all these people, when they whine before me and say, give us meat to eat? I cannot carry all this people by myself. It is too much for me. If you would deal thus with me, kill me rather, I beg you, and let me no more see of my wretchedness." But Moshe said, and then later Moshe said, "The people who are with me number 600,000 men. Yet you say, I will give them enough meat to eat for a month. Could enough flocks and herds be slaughtered to suffice them? Could all the fishes of the sea be gathered for them to suffice them?" Jehovah answered Moshe, "Is there a limit to Jehovah's power? You shall soon see whether what I have said comes to you or not." So here we see, Moshe's having a bad day. He is, the people have been complaining. They've been on him. They want meat. They want food. Why did we come out here? Are we home yet? When are we going to get there? It sounds like a bunch of kids in the back of a Suburban. But yet, Jehovah says, he says, don't worry about it. I have it under control. I'll take care of it. But even then, Moshe's like, how are you going to do it? There's so many. Now, he's going to do it. Now, Moshe again prays for the people not to be destroyed. Now, again, we saw this once before. He could have allowed Jehovah to do what he said, and that the descendants of Moshe could have been the chosen people. But instead, he thought of the people and how Jehovah would be perceived by the people around them. We read this in Numbers, Bamidbar 14, 11 through 19. Okay, does everybody still have sound? Do a one real quick before we keep going. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. All right, perfect, good. Little lag. All right, we'll keep going. All right, in Numbers, Bamidbar 14, 11 through 19. And Jehovah said to Moshe, how long will this people spurn me, and how long will they have no faith in me, despite all the signs I have performed in their midst? Jehovah did all these wondrous things in front of their faces. And yet they still spurn him, they still reject him. I will strike them with a pestilence and disown them. I will make of you a nation far more numerous than they. But Moshe said to Jehovah, when the Egyptians from whose midst you brought up this people in your might hear the news, they will tell it to the inhabitants of the land. Now they will have heard that you, Jehovah, are in the midst of this people, and that you, Jehovah, appear in plain sight when your cloud rests over them, and when you go before the people in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you then slay this people to a man, the nations who have heard your fame will say, it must be because Jehovah was powerless to bring this people into the land. He had promised them on oath that he slaughtered them in the wilderness. Therefore, I pray, let my Adonai forbearance be great, as you have declared, saying, Jehovah, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon his children to the third and fourth generations. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to your great kindness, as you have forgiven this people ever since Egypt. Now we get near the end. They're getting close to the promised land, but here Moshe forgets his humbleness. And this one incident prevents Moshe from entering the promised land. in Bar Midbar Numbers 20, 6 through 13. Moshe and Aaron came away from the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. The presence of Yehovah appeared to them, and Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, "You and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community. Before their very eyes, order the rock to yield its fruit." Now I want you to pay attention. He didn't say do anything to the rock except for order it. In other words, say to the rock, yield its water. Thus you shall produce water for them from the rock, provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. And Moshe took the rod from before Yehovah as he commanded him. Moshe and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, "Listen, you rebels. Shall we get water for you out of this rock?" Moshe raised his hand and he struck the rock twice. Out came copious water, and the community and their beasts drank. Now, did he hold up Yehovah in this one instant? It says, shall we? It didn't say, shall Yehovah? Shall we get water for you out of this rock? He didn't hold up Yehovah here. And why did he have to hit the rock twice with the stick? Well, remember, what did Yehovah tell him to do? He said, order the rock to yield its water. He didn't say strike the rock. He said order the rock. So he was telling him to essentially to do something that did not require his own hand. Now, if he hits the rock, it's very possible he knocks something loose, water comes out. Makes him look like he produced the water. But if he orders the rock to produce water, the water comes out, then it's seen as, again, it's a wonder of Yehovah. But Yehovah said to Moshe and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land I have given them. Those are the waters of Meribah," meaning the Israelites quarreled with Yehovah, through which he affirmed his sanctity. So here we have a situation. Moshe was, all the time he was there, all the time he's been a humble man, one instance kept him from getting to the promised land. Well, here we have the life of a humble man, and we need to be humble today too. Now, we can do this by prayer, fasting, submitting ourselves to the teachings he gives us to follow, to bow down and to worship him, always praise him for what he gives us. We should beware of being too high-minded, proud and haughty, thinking we have come to our efforts through our own devices, and not be thankful to him. Our focus should always be on how our actions reflect upon his sanctity, his being set apart. We must focus ourselves on serving him. We know that for the humble, he will show them mercy, give them shelter, feed them, guide them in his path, teach them his ways, give them the land, give them victory, consider them, give them peace, and he favors them. We saw all this through all the verses we've read today. Now, there were some other study words that we're going to look at just for a little bit here, which essentially deal with some of the other words we saw for humble here. Like, for instance, the word shafel, 82:13, which is low, or it's a verb, and it's a verb on page 1050 of the VDB. Why don't we turn over real quick, and we'll look at just a few of these here to give us an idea of some of these. On, let's see, Yeshayahu or Isaiah 2:9. So Isaiah 2:9. Take a second to get over there. Isaiah 2:9. Yeah, get to the right page. Right. And it says, "But man shall be humbled, and mortal brought low. Oh, do not forgive them." And we see in here we see in here, and it's yish, fall is the word here, and this is the one used for low. But it also uses the word, it uses here, be humble too. So we have in here, looks like Yisha, man, Yisha, Adam. So man brought humbled man there. Also with verse 11, a man's haughty look shall be brought low, and the pride of mortals shall be humbled, but none but Jehovah shall be exalted in that day. So again, we see here in 11, we see shafel used as humbled here. And then 12 says, for the Lord of hosts, or Jehovah of hosts, has already a day against all that is proud and arrogant, against all that is lofty, so that it is brought low. And this is, and it's actually in the text is and brought, and low is what it says here. Va shafel. And then in 17 of the same one, then a man's haughtiness shall be humbled, and the pride of a man shall be brought low. But none but Jehovah shall be exalted in that day. And again, that is, again, here we see it's, again, ba shafel here in the text. Okay, so you can read some of the other ones for the Mishlei verse there. We also see, so this is to be low as an adjective. It's the 82:17 reference is to be made lower. And we'll just look at the one here. This is we'll look in Yeshayahu again, so we'll stay in the same book. 57. Too far. 57. 57:15. Okay. For thus he said, he who is high aloft dwells forever, whose name is holy. We see who dwells high aloft. Yet with the contrite and the lowly in spirit, reviving the spirit of the lowly, reviving the heart of the contrite. And here in the text, it says, it's actually using shafel here twice. It's using it as shafel, ba shafel, ruach, or lowly in spirit. And then you have the, here we have it's ruach shafalim. Those are spirit lowlies. It's actually, it's saying it's plural there. And then the last one was anav, which was 60:37. That was humble or lowly, which is the feminine noun of the one we read, and that was Tehillim, Psalms 18:36. Okay, 18:36. Right. You have given me the shield of your protection. Your right hand has sustained me. Your care has made me great, is what it reads in the JPS. Make sure that is 18 and that is 36. Okay, so this is anav. So looking through here, looking through the Hebrew text to find this one. Now it's and actually it's using care here. and it's using va, ana, okay, it says va, not ka, anaka is what it's using here. Anaka, tar, bene. So this is the great, it's saying great care. I'm not sure that is really actually a good translation here in the JPS. But it's it would be your lowly or your lowliness has made me great probably would be better. Lowliness or your humble has made me great. Okay, and let's see, 45. 5 is the last one that we have here. All right, well, here we go. In your glory, win success. Ride on in the cause of truth and meekness and right. Let your right hand lead you to awesome deeds. And here we have in 5, we have here va, ana, Zedek. So here we've got here is your humbleness, you're humble and righteous. Cause of the, or in this case, it's coming from the verse and says the meek and the righteous is what it's saying, but the humbled and the righteous, or right. Okay. And that wraps up the talk for today. I'll open up the mic for questions, both in the room and also here locally.
So are your ears ringing?
Yeah. Yep. That's a long one. Any questions? Any questions here?
There's one Deuteronomy, what is 15:11,
Mm-hmm.
that says that the poor will never depart out of your land.
Mm-hmm.
I've always interpreted that to mean the poor will never depart out of their land, because at that point in time, by the time they get to Moab, Yahweh sees that Israel is not going to follow his ways. They're not going to walk in his statutes and his judgments. So then you find that he changes some of the ordinances they had already given him to protect the poor, provide a greater hedge, because he sees they're not walking ways. I mean, if they just follow the Jubilees,
Right.
what does it say? It says there will not be a poor man among you if you follow the Jubilees.
Yeah, I think that part of the problem is that he recognizes humans. You know, I hate to almost use the word human nature.
Right.
That we are. That we tend to want more than we have. We spend more than we need, and sometimes people, you know, either through their faults or not, the way I was always looking at it was that we would always, the reason there would always be poor is because there would always be someone who found themselves in a bad circumstance and have to be taken care of. In that sense of, for instance, you know, the case where a Hebrew has to sell himself into slavery. You know, why would that happen? I mean, if he has that land as an inheritance, and he's already sold his land, and yet he's still, you know, he's still in so bad a shape he has to sell himself. And as a slave.
I guess I see on the other side, you have the creditors, that they will not release the debt every 7 years. If
Mhm.
they hold them to it, then there's oppression going on.
Right.
And then,
Yeah, that's
if
true.
they're not even following the Jubilees,
Right.
then it just amounts.
Well, they're not only the Jubilee, but they're not following the Shemitah, which is essentially every, not just the 50 year, but every 7 years to release debt. Because frankly, they're supposed to do that, and that's one of the things they got chastised for in Nehemiah, Ezra. They were chastised because they said they would release their debts to these people and free them, and then they turned around and then re-enslaved them and stuff after they said they agreed they would release them. So yeah.
Are we taking questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have an addition.
No, something like